You're listening to Bush Radio. Bush Radio.
Your real talk radio.
Daganan kilo bejanin kom lo moham. Di beta maso sanalom. Muasa benge kaputo.
State Affairs.
State Affairs with Edmund Obilo.
I have read opinions on how Nigerians are only talkers, not doers, when it comes to political activism. Dele Momodu brought the subject up again when he frowned at the silence of Nigerian youths over the continued detention of OMOYELE SOWORE by the federal government. Is talk really cheap like he claimed?
Well, I wouldn't say so. Thank you first for having me on your show. And it's really a privilege to join you and to share a little bit of my own point of view on your platform.
Like Dele Momodu claimed, is talk really cheap?
No, I wouldn't say talk is cheap, and I wouldn't say talk is not cheap. It depends on the person who is speaking, from whose perspective we're looking at it. If I'm going to say, I would say talk is not cheap because I put action behind my words. And my track record has a lot for that. And so when I'm going to speak on behalf of, because I represent this generation, I will say that talk is not cheap because I am taking a leadership position, not sitting as an armchair analyst who is holding a gavel and judging everybody by that. And I must say that also that is not to say that I'm erasing the fact that several young people who have not been taught or trained, should not be blamed. If you don't train them, don't blame them. Our generation, the generation before us, have failed in helping our youth the truth to know. So now they want them to know things based on what have not been taught. How exactly does that work? So when Dele Momodu sits to say talk is cheap and youth are not doing stuff, what I just clearly made him realize that the few that we see hanging about on social media and throwing tantrums does not represent the youth of this generation. There are people doing wonderful things without making noise. Some of them don't even have social media handles, and those who have are very quiet online. And those who are doing stuff are not ringing bells. Activism, as we know it, in the days of the military interregnum, it's not the same thing as activism now. We are redefining that plane. We are replacing activism by fusing advocacy into activism. So it's not just about throwing tantrums so that we can establish our notoriety, only to be considered as next in line, for power when politicians are choosing youth. What we are doing is positioning ourselves strategically to engage government in an innovative way that does not demonize anyone.
In your reply, you talked about redefining the art and science of challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
Now, I want to know, what are the factors behind this redefinition? Why the need for a redefinition?
There is need for redefinition because when you are, like Sun Tzu would say, you need to understand the enemy, so to say, when you're in a battle. You don't deal with, if you're engaged with a Goliath, you don't treat a Goliath like you treat, any other enemy that you have. You have to have a strategy that is fungible, a strategy that is moldable, a strategy that is like water, that flows, a strategy that, you can actually update as you go along, not something rigid. Because you are a hammer doesn't make everything a nail. So because of that, there are ways in which you can redefine. The people we have today that they themselves, this same generation, stampeded to power without reason, with emotions, have become the tyrants of today. They have become people who don't respect the rule of law and what have you. And if you are going to engage such people, you need to change, because the rules of engagement have changed. Your approach must be strategic, not emotive. So that's precisely what I was saying, that you have to redefine. In this same economy or in this same socio-political plane, what their generation have neglected for over 70 years was engaged by us. I'm talking about the criminal justice system that have been left derelict. Nobody see it as a critical point of engaging government to ensure that we have a holistic reform across board. They are waiting for them to get to power before they can begin to make changes, and it will be too late by then.
Let's go back to your tweet. I want to read. You said the future belongs to us, and there is no point in struggling for anything whatsoever with a dying generation of degenerates and short-sighted irredentists who may have been deceived into thinking they will live forever, but we have mastered the art of planting trees. Mr. Awosanya, what trees are you talking about?
We are talking about active citizenry. We are talking about doing things today not because of pecuniaries, not because we want power, but simply because we want to establish a legacy that will live on for generations. We are not looking at low-hanging fruit or opportunities that we can take advantage of just to enrich ourselves. We're looking at doing things that can be replicated. We're looking at building and raising new leaders, new generation of leaders who are easy to govern, difficult to rule, and impossible to enslave. So these are the kind of stuff that we're doing by ensuring that we put our hands on the plow and do that which we want and be the change that we want to see or we hope to see. That's precisely what I'm saying.
Does this mean that the degenerates you talked about should be allowed free rein as they cause more havoc?
No. We are not in the communication age or in the industrial age where we have to do things a certain way, the way we have always done it. We're in an innovative age, just like I painted in that picture, that it took that generation 100 years before they got to the industrial age. It took them another 100 years within the industrial age itself, and most people have not left that industrial age. But look at the kind of changes that we have witnessed and experienced and even facilitated in the past 10 years. So we have seen far more changes than they have. So they are more rigid than we are. You understand what I'm trying to say? So based on this, we're not saying we're giving them a free hand, because of course we're not. We're engaging and we're getting fruit for it. There are bills that are being passed because of our facilitation, not because of their own support or activities of riotous activities of singing the praises of people in power. We are challenging the authority legally, lawfully, and using the constitution to engage. And where they fail to act, we act ourselves. In this same socio-political space, we have given back people their jobs, where they just sit down and relax. In this same environment, we have done so many things that they have not even thought of doing in over 70 years. So this is precisely what we're saying. We are not doing it because we want something to gain now. We're doing it because we are building a new Nigeria, creating hope, and building a new Nigeria for our children, who will begin to see these actions as the new Nigerian of their dream, so that they themselves can replicate all these things and even add their own innovatively to make Nigeria better. It's not always about what is in need for me. It's about how can I help? How can I make this better? It's not about sitting back and expecting somebody to fight while you watch it on TV. It's about doing something from where you are. Leadership is not about occupying political positions or burning tires on the street based on emotions or discontent alone. It is about galvanizing yourself and knowing what the true state of things are, knowing what the law is, knowing what the leaders are meant to do, and then knowing how to hold them account for it. And where they fail to live up to responsibility, we show responsibility. That is precisely what I was talking about.
Did you also say that your generation is misunderstood?
Of course, we are highly misunderstood. Highly misunderstood. These are people who are raised to believe that going to school and coming out with 2 cardboards will qualify them for a job. It makes it, we were made to believe that once you have an NYC certificate with your school certificate, everybody owes you money. But that is not the reality of today. We're turning out graduates who have no jobs out there, who have no future out there, who are dependent on government paternalistic adventures. And look at what we have. We don't even know the number of people we have in Nigeria. It has always been an estimate. We have a population of close to 200 million people, 70% of which are youth, and we have no plans whatsoever for them, other than waging a war of attrition against these people. And that's precisely what we're talking about. So this is where the conversation needs to start. How do we begin to reinforce, the actual essence of education as against the assembly line literacy program that we have inherited from their generation?
Is social media a tool for this redefinition you talk about?
Social media is actually a vehicle, You can call it a tool. It's a vehicle through which we address ourselves, we engage ourselves, we galvanize people, and we spread ideas, and then we begin to create a platform through which you can listen and hear people out based on the challenges that they are facing from where they are. As like I said, these are not theories. These are things that have been practiced over 3 years, and we have been seeing a lot of engagement across board, and people have been getting results from this. People can call from Abuja, people can call from the southeast, the northeast, anywhere in Nigeria and get help as far as the criminal justice system is concerned. Whether you're having issues with a legal matter, or you're having issues with police, or you're having issues with the prison service, we will be there for you to be able to help you navigate the whole conundrum and engage the right people in the right places. Because the thing is, the reason why things are not changing is because we stampede people who are not qualified into power, and then we go to church to pray.
Did you say stampede?
Yes, I say stampede because it is that's the best word for what is actually happening. That's exactly the best word, because there's really no means through which the right researches are done to be able to find people who are credible, who are qualified, who have conscientiousness, who have the clarity or perspicacity to actually lead a nation in the 21st century.
You just touched a point that interests me.
Sir.
Who is really
Yes,
stampeding who?
You remember that we have a politics void of ideology in Nigeria. So based on that, they are using this emotive identity politics of hate, or if you like, populism, in order to galvanize people to make the wrong result. If you can recall very well that the essence of democracy, even as defined, as created, as innovated by the Greeks, was more about the enlightened people making decisions on how things run in the society, until it gets perversed by people, or there is a perversion across board by other people who interpret democracy from their own perspective. Now in Nigeria, it is the poor populace that actually make decisions based on the 5 naira or 10 naira or 3,000 naira given to them. At the end of the day, they are reduced to a life unfit for cattle. So this is what I mean by stampeding. Because of course, all this set of people, the people we know as activists today are politicians tomorrow. But what we are saying now is, based on our own ecclesiastical altruism and approach towards advocacy, we're not looking for power. We don't believe in that social construct that suggests that you need to get into power before you can make changes. We have shown by example that fundamental changes that have been neglected for decades can actually be engaged even without you being in power. It's about knowing what the law says. It's about holding people to account in the know.
At SegaLink on Twitter is my guest on State Affairs. I'm talking about Segun Awosanya, Chief Executive Officer, Alliance Media. Awosanya, let's come back to where we started from.
Okay.
You said in your tweet to Dele Momodu's assertion that a good number of us are concerned and committed to the release and perfection of Yele Sowore's bill, as well as others. So what is being done?
A lot of engagements have been done behind the curtains in terms of revisiting the bill condition. We know that it is punitive, it is primitive, and it's unconscionable. But at the end of the day, we just want him out so that we can begin to address issues appropriately. And Barrister Femi Falana is actually on top of this game, and then we're doing all that we need to ensure that it is perfected and it returns home. And that's all I can say about that. Now, it is not just about the person Wole Sowore. It's not Wole Sowore that is actually arrested and incarcerated. It is actually our freedom of expression that is incarcerated. It is actually our right to speak and to hold our leaders to account that is actually jailed. So we must not see it from the perspective of an individual in order to romance or reinforce that concept that suggests that I am not concerned, in as much as it is not me. And that's exactly what they have done. That's the brainwashing that is going all around here. When something happens to anybody, you say it's because it did not happen to my family, it's not my concern. Anything that is killing your neighbor is actually giving you a head start. So that is why we must see this as something that's as an injury to all. So it's not about Sowore as such. It is about the illegality that is playing out right before our very own eyes. The attempt by some elements, to abort us from the womb of democracy.
As you use social media to reconstruct the state, the federal government plans to sanitize the space that you are using as a tool for change. Do you understand what the government calls sanitization?
Because it's a government of irredentists and a government that is unconscionable, that has lost total connection with the people, they will use ambiguous terms and nebulous statements that does not have a head or a tail, that is subject to interpretations by rogue forces on our streets, to create fear into the heart of the people so that they can leave them, stagnated wherever they are. As it were now, there are some terms that once you use it, start ringing bells to them. I never knew when the word revolution was criminalized in Nigeria by any law. It has never been, but right now they are making it feel as if you use some words, you account for it, as though this by itself is lawful. It is not lawful. They can't continue to create their own law as they move on. You say you want to sanitize the social media space. I don't understand. I've never heard such a naive statement before from any government. In fact, we should be ashamed hearing that from a government, because this is a democracy. We're not in China. We're not in any of this autocratic nation where anybody can just do anything they like, just to be able to have a laissez-faire, a tyranny all over the place. You need to understand, you don't need regulation for the social media space. You need to understand and engage. You cannot continue to have things the way you used to have it in your days. This is not 1983. This is 2001. This is 2019. So you have to understand that you're dealing with a highly populated youth here who don't rely on newspapers or watch television. You understand? They are on their devices. By 2020, which is a few months from now, 70% of every human being in the world will have access to a smartphone. So you're telling me you want to regulate that? Is that not an effort in futility? Is that not a waste of resources? Another attempt to fleece us of funds while you're trying to establish tyranny? What stops you from being accountable? What stops you from being transparent? Social media and the internet, as it were, it's the only democracy in the world that sells the ideals of transparency. Where is yours? These are the questions we need to ask these people.
Mr. Awosanya, are you not worried about fake news?
There are ways in which you deal with fake news in advanced society. Fake news social media is a continuous conversation. We are building a reputation for ourselves. These are things that the government themselves need to partner with people who understand how the social media space works, so that they can begin to engage the populace. You cannot govern what you don't understand. You need the people to govern. If 70% of the population that represent the strength of the nation, that represent the future of your nation, is clearly misunderstood and not engaged, there is a disaster coming. Look at Tunisia. What caused the problem? Why did Africa rise as at that time? Simply because somebody, a fruit seller who was a graduate, who was pushed to the wall, was frustrated. His fruit wheelbarrow was seized from him at another time. After he must have gone through this ordeal severally, he set himself ablaze, and that was the end of that democracy. Is that what they want in Nigeria? Do they realize how much we have been holding the people back from rising? This is precisely what we're doing, but they don't seem to understand it because of the fact that they are not there to serve anybody. They are there to perpetuate themselves in power without responsibility. And that's what you're saying. Every single statement they make show they don't understand the people. They are not ready to govern. They don't want to be accountable. They are not ready to serve, and they just want to rule like militants without responsibility in an unconscionable way. And this is precisely why we are engaging these people, trying to show them by demonstrating what leadership truly means. We don't control social media space. We engage the space and get to and understand people from their own perspective so that we can impact them. People no longer learn the way the syllabus puts it. They learn the way they will understand, the way they prefer to learn. Unless you begin to understand education from that perspective, you are not going to have a you are not going to engage the public. You're always going to be against your people. And that's not governance. That's slavery.
Let's look at it this way. Can you equate this talk about sanitization? Can you equate it to the new concept called Operation Positive Identification?
Okay. When Operation Positive Identification rumors started making the rounds, I was the first to say it was fake news because I am very familiar with the comms of the military and also the criminal justice system generally in terms of homeland security. I understand the architecture. I know how the communiques are being passed, and I know what is coming from where and who. So when I saw that message, I knew it couldn't have come from the normal sources because it was just too anachronistic to our time. Number one, it was too primitive. I refused to understand or to believe that our military was that backward. So I said it was fake news, that the military should address this and then communicate the original commander's intent on this operation to the people before they misconstrue the idea. But of course, because our military as well has been balkanized by ethnic brigades, people who would rather satisfy whosoever that put them in power than serve their nation. So they slowed down too much, wasted enough time, and allowed the lie or the rumor to proliferate. And now, by the time they now release what their Operation Positive Identity was about, it was already too late. Every single semblance that it bears with the rumor was taken as if the rumor was actually what was going to be done. And automatically, if the people are seeing it this way, imagine how the sparsely educated soldiers handling guns, given an opportunity to work within the civic space, how they're going to misconstrue the whole idea and start killing people and start torturing people and start oppressing people and extorting them for money. We are having the same problem with the police. We started in 2016, late 2016, 2017, when we started having problem with the military arm of the police, which is the tactical squads, those who are trained to fight kidnapping, anti-cultism, special anti-robbery squad. These are soldiers under normal circumstances. You don't put men of war on peaceful street and expect peace. They are going to make war when they are bored. And very soon they'll start oppressing people. Because the act that actually established our police system is still a primitive act that only talks about the constabulary, which is protect the leaders or rulers from the people. And that's how they are. That's why we're pushing for police reforms. We have that problem with the police. We're trying to solve it. You now want to push our military officers to the street to start checking ID cards. And it is so ironical because in a country where our civic vital registration and statistics have not been harmonized deliberately, where there's no single document that unites Nigerians as a whole, we don't have anything in common that we can say this is actually an identification you find with all Nigerians. There's no such. Our passport is not embraced by everybody. Not everybody has it. Not everybody is banked. Everybody has a driver's license. Not everybody has anything. Even the NIN, the national identification number, is not given to anyone. Not everybody has the card, and not everybody has the number. So what is the basis of checking ID cards on the street if not for oppression? So the regulation and all the policy somersault that you're seeing today shows primitivity, shows lack of capacity, shows lack of conscience, shows lack of preparation, shows lack of will to govern. It shows lack of responsibility at all. And we believe that, if you must lead, leadership is responsibility. And our government, there are no role models. You understand? There are no role models. So precisely what are they teaching our children? Yeah.
When will the future come?
It has already started because we are beginning to make positive change in the society through our engagement without shedding blood.
Segun Awosanya, thank you for featuring on State Affairs.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being here.